this meeting to order. This is the regular school board meeting of the Northfield Public Schools. It is Monday, September 23rd. Matt, we have a few items in the table file.
Yes, there are a few items in the table file for your consideration, including some personnel appointments, increase, decrease, and change in assignment, and a resignation.
Okay. If there's no objection, we will add these to the consent grouping as we move forward. All right, we are ready to move on to public comment. This is opportunity for members of the community to address the board. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board? All right, we will move on to approval of the minutes. Board members, you have in your packets the minutes from the school board meeting on September 9th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Carrie.
Second.
Seconded by Ann. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. All right. Announcements and recognition.
And Madam Chair, this evening to begin our announcements and recognitions, we have Kathy Sandberg, who is the coordinator of the Rice County Family Services Collaborative, and she provides staff support to the Rice County Chemical Health Coalition. She's going to give us a brief update on the collaborative services, and then we also have a presentation this evening that we're quite excited about.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everyone. Try not to squeak that. Specifically tonight, what I'd like to talk about is the Rice County Chemical Health Coalition, which is a project of the Rice County Family Services Collaborative. We work in very close partnership with Northfield HCI and have enjoyed a lot of financial support both from the collaborative and from outside the community. Northfield, as you may know, had a drug-free community support program grant, which is a federal grant for the full 10 years, which is the maximum allowed. We just finished our 5th year in Faribault, and we were informed last week that we will receive another 5 years. So in total in the county, we will have had 20 years, some of them overlapping, worth of that kind of funding. But we also receive a lot of support from organizations like United Way and numbers of organizations that support us both financially and in-kind support, which is very crucial. The Rice County Chemical Health Coalition has been active in preventing youth alcohol and drug abuse in Rice County since at least 2004. The records get kind of fuzzy back before that. With its extensive community partnerships, the coalition operates on the principles of several things. First of all, multiple sectors with multiple strategies. In other words, anybody in the community who wants to be a part of this, whether they're school folks or church folks or law enforcement or judges, whoever they are, they represent a sector in our community, and we welcome them into the effort. And we like to also encourage the use of multiple strategies because there's no one single answer that works for everything. If there were a single answer, we would have found it probably by 2005, and we'd be done with our work, and that's not the case. The use of evidence-based programs and practices is also crucial to us. We know that time and money are short and precious, and we like to make the best of both of them by using things that have been shown to be effective in other places. And finally, we prefer to focus on environmental or systems change because we know that that's the thing that lasts. Drug-free dances, youth centers, t-shirts, all those kinds of things are really popular and really fun to do and really easy work in terms of getting people involved. There's a very low level of skill necessary. Not that those things aren't important, but they aren't things that last beyond the day of or a very short time after that. But when we can do things like change policies, change systems, those are things that can have a lasting effect and can change how this community raises its kids. From the most social norms marketing campaign to the social host ordinance to the Take It to the Box project and more, the coalition has increased the county community's capacity to foster safe and healthy youth development in this county. And what we've learned, perhaps the most important thing that we've learned, is that the work is successful because of the relationships and because of the people who are involved in it. And our award tonight, bless you, our award tonight is an attempt to recognize that. I just said to somebody the other day, and I said it again to Marnie tonight, one of the things that we do probably least well is celebrate and recognize, and yet we know the importance of that. So I'm really pleased tonight that we can be here in this place with these people for the presentation of what we call our Prevention Champion Award. And Julie, there she is going to do that for us tonight. Thank you.
Oops, sorry. It was my honor to nominate Marnie for the Project Prevention Champion Award. For those of us who have been fortunate enough to work with Marnie, we have witnessed firsthand her tenacious attitude, caring spirit, and passion for helping the youth in our community become successful adults, all that make her a champion in every sense of the word. Carrie Duba, the school psychologist at Northfield High School, provided these eloquent remarks about Marnie. Marnie is a model of a champion for supporting the youth in our community. She is smart, strategic, and savvy in collaborating and teaming with multiple agencies and services in order to provide a network of support that will keep the kids in our community healthy and safe. I have been fortunate enough to team with her as she advocates for programs, families, and students tirelessly. She pursues what she thinks is right, efficient, and most beneficial to Northfield families. She is a wonderful resource and asset to our community. Congratulations, Marnie, on receiving this well-deserved recognition and award.
Oh, thank you. I want to say two things. You knew I wouldn't get out of here without saying something. First of all, I want to thank the Chemical Health Coalition and Julie. I didn't know Julie had nominated me. That makes it even more special. And I just want to say that I love doing what I get to do, and I appreciate that the Dr. Richardson and the school board and my administrative team let me partner with agencies like the Chemical Health Coalition and the Mental Health Coalition, because it really is about healthy learners make better learners, and I say it all the time. Because I really, really believe that. And we still have lots of work to do in our community, but I do think we're making good steps. And I think that programs like Torch and Primetime and some of the other things that we do really work with those kids that are most academically and perhaps behaviorally at risk. I also want to thank you for how much I appreciate working for a district that so values collaboration. None of this would happen if we weren't willing to throw open the schoolhouse doors and say, come on in, let's partner, and let's just make things better for our kids. Not all districts are like that, and I want you to know how very important that is and how very much I appreciate that. It's one of my favorite things about working here is our ability to partner with community agencies and individuals. So thanks again very much. This is a very special award for me. Thanks.
We have a couple of other announcements this evening. Congratulations, Marnie. Well done. For the third consecutive year, Northfield Middle School has followed its traditional August Parent Night program with a second program conducted in Spanish. Over 40 family members participated in the second night on September 10th. The emphasis of the program was to support parents with school learning tools such as Schoology and Skyward Family Access. So really good turnout for that second open house. The second component of the new 7th grade environmental learning experience will take place on October 3rd and October 8th. Half of the 7th graders and their teachers will be participating in a confidence course and team building exercise at the new base camp facility at Fort Snelling. The other half will have field experiences at Riverbend Nature Center and the Cowling Arboretum. The group will swap sites for their second day, and board members are welcome to observe or participate in any of those sessions, and I think you can contact Mr. Peshta if you're interested in that. And finally, Northfield Public School staff and Dr. Scott Kohler of Alina Health Clinic will be offering concussion and head injury awareness sessions during both middle school parent conference nights on October 10th and the 15th. Students who participate in any physical activity at school or throughout the community are encouraged to attend and complete the baseline assessment in the computer labs with trained staff. Additional sessions may be offered based on the demand for the service, and I know that they've done a number of these same kinds of programs in the summer just prior to some of our fall sports starting, so I think this is just an expansion of that, and it's certainly a good practice to get started. Those are our announcements for this evening, Madam Chair.
Great. Board members, other announcements or recognition? All right. Okay, we are ready to move on to our first item for discussion or report, which is Mr. Earl Weinman is going to talk to us about Our Story, a guide to the history of Northfield, Minnesota.
Good evening, board. My name is Earl Weinman. I teach 7th grade social science at the Northfield Middle School. I also coordinate the SCOPE program, which I'll talk about just for a minute. But we're really honored to be here, and we're really excited about what we want to show and tell you in a very pure form. The SCOPE program stands for Student Community Outreach Program Experience, and it's existed since 1992. And the philosophy of the program is to take gifted 8th grade students and have them do original historical research, writing, with the purpose of producing a product that is of benefit to the community. Accomplishments in the SCOPE program, just a few, would be the school museum that's currently housed in it's housed in the current Northfield Middle School. It is the museum of the 301 Union Street School. We created a book called Caught in the Storm. It was published in 2008. It's a field guide for the James and Younger Gang Escape Trail, and it won a 2008 Best Nonfiction Book of the Year called the Milton Perry Award, an award given in Joplin, Missouri by Western aficionados. But today we have something equally, if not more exciting. We have a new book that was published called Our Story. Our Story is 42 chapters of Northfield history. It consists of 240 pages with very expertly written citations. But the unique aspect of this book, it was written entirely for the 3rd grade and above level as a textbook to be used in the local school program. We started this book in 2009, and we just got the book this summer. We did a book release last Thursday at the Northfield Historical Society, so it is currently on sale at the Historical Society. All the proceeds go to the youth education museum programs such as Junior Posse, SCOPE, Junior Curator, etc. But what I really am excited to do is to introduce the authors of this book. Unfortunately, Sandy Carson, one of our authors, couldn't make it. She had a choir concert tonight. However, the other 9 did attend, and each one is going to approach the mic, introduce themselves, and speak to you about one aspect of writing the book. So you'll get the 4 years in about 8 minutes. So I will step aside, and our first speaker will approach the mic, and we'll learn a little bit about what it took to write this book.
Good evening, board. My name is Tyler Hepler, and I participated in the 2nd year of writing the Our Story book with Nicholas Gonnerman, Jenna Sheffert, Alex Batiste, and Aaron Hahn. I'm here to talk about why I got involved in SCOPE. And while 7th grade seems like a long time ago for me, if there's one thing I will always remember, it was being taught by Mr. Weinman. His classes were funny, his teaching was good, and he taught us a lot about Northfield history. So when I had the opportunity to participate in SCOPE during my 8th grade year, I took the chance and I filled out one of the green forms, which I remember was surprisingly less about my qualifications and more about why I wanted to join SCOPE. And despite the millions, it seems like, I'm sure it wasn't anywhere near that, applications that went in, I was chosen for one of them. And in doing so, I was able to join the group of people who helped finish up this story, which we're very proud of, for the 3rd graders. And that is why I joined SCOPE. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jenna Sheffert, and I'll briefly describe what we did day to day, month to month. So SCOPE was unlike any classroom experience I have ever had. I was fortunate to have the neat opportunity that not many 8th graders have. Instead of staying cooped up in a classroom for 2 hours a day, I regularly took a bus to the Northfield Historical Society to do my work. However, before this could be done, us SCOPE students dedicated the first quarter of each year learning more writing techniques with the Carleton interns. They would teach us nitpicky rules that helped us as writers. After that, the next couple of months was dedicated to writing the Northfield chapters. A bus would leave 3 times a week after announcements for anybody in their writing or researching stages that wanted to go to the Northfield Historical Society. Once in a while, a student would stay back to edit with Mr. Weinman one-on-one. After we were at the Northfield Historical Society, we had the ability to look through the archives for anything that pertained to the chapter we are writing about. We usually spent a few days gathering information before beginning the rough draft of a chapter. After that, it was time to begin writing and having people edit the chapters. Usually, everyone was in a different part of a chapter or a different stage of a chapter every day. But that's basically what we did after all our hard work, and it eventually paid off into the book. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Erin Hahn, and I was a part of the second scope group when I was in 8th grade. And this is about the third time within the past 5 days that I've been able to present this book. It's been an explosion of presentations, and every time I present it, it really sinks in just how great our accomplishment is. So I'm here today to explain to you how we chose the topics that we addressed in the book. So as a group of 8th graders, we hadn't had a lot of prior experience with Northfield history. Of course, we knew everything there was to know about the James Younger Gang and the bank raid, and a little bit about the colleges. But other than that, we weren't really sure what we were going to be writing about. Obviously, we needed to fill an entire textbook with information about Northfield. So one day, Mr. Wyman had us sit down, and in front of a whiteboard, we just started throwing out ideas. Random people and buildings and cows. That's one of the ideas that I like to bring up most often because it's surprisingly incredibly interesting part of Northfield history, thus why it was put in the slogan. And so we started putting them all on the whiteboard, and eventually we each chose about 4 to 6 topics that we would work on throughout the course of the year. And throughout those several months that I was working on the textbook, I learned way more than I could possibly ever have imagined about Northfield history. Every single person or building that I researched really just brought me closer to this town, and it was an amazing experience. So I'm looking forward for you all to get a chance to see it. Thank you very much.
I'm Alex Baptiste. I was in the second year of Scope, and I'm here to talk to you about how we created the chapters. As Jenna mentioned, most days we went down to the Historical Society to do research and writing in the basement where they contain their archives, which are mostly old Northfield news articles. We would look through all the Northfield news articles for any mentions to the topics we had picked, gather notes about those topics, and then start writing them on Google Docs. After we finished writing the chapter, then we asked the other people in our year to peer edit them on Google Docs, which was wonderful. It really helped with the writing. Then we asked the interns to edit also, and after they had finished with all their edits and no one else could find anything else wrong with the paper, we then went to Mr. Weinman and asked him to edit it more for things like, would a third grader understand what we had written? Then after Mr. Weinman was done editing it, we then put it into Google Docs, left it there, and went and wrote another chapter the same way. Then at the end of the year, Mr. Weinman took all of them together. We started editing all of them one last time. Then we left them in the charge of Mr. Weinman and the layout artist and editors, and they did a wonderful job organizing it and selecting pictures to make it look wonderful. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nicholas Gonerman, and I was one of the authors who worked on the book. When we were writing this book, our job was to record the specifics of our chapter. So what year did St. Olaf start? What were the early schools like in Northfield? What did Adalbert Ames do? That kind of thing. We focused on the specifics of what we were doing. So when someone asked me recently what I had learned from this experience, that's what originally jumped into my head. But then I started thinking, having been able to take a step back from the bustle of the writing and researching process, I can say, and I think I speak for all of us, that we learned much more than the history of this town. We also learned about its character. And that's the most important aspect of this project, I think, that we 10 came away with a deeper understanding of what makes Northfield the unique place that it is today. I learned, first of all, that Northfielders respect and learn from their rich past. As a town, we look back at a colorful history with pride and excitement, and as a community, we're willing to devote time to celebrate our past and value it. When we were giving these textbooks to the third graders last week and a little bit this week, we were all surprised, I think, by how much energy they had and how excited they were to get this book. They were full of questions to ask us and comments. And so I think that shows how much our local history has gone through our generations and how much we look back as a community to value it and appreciate it. I learned, secondly, that Northfielders are smart, that being entrepreneurial and sensible is in Northfielders' nature. The colleges, Lyceum, and the library are all examples of our oldest and most cherished institutions. And I learned, finally, that this town is kooky, that we have a good sense of humor, and most importantly, we can and do poke fun at ourselves. Cowles, Colleges, and Contentment, the first thing that visitors see when they come to Northfield, is indicative of Northfielders' ability to look back at their past with humor. And the ability for Northfielders to do that and be self-deprecating about the past shows how much they really do care about the past. These themes, a respect for history, intellect, and a healthy sense of humor, mean more to me than just historical facts. They show me that this city's character means more and does more to strengthen us as a community than any other name, date, or place. And that makes me hopeful for the future. We not just learned through this experience, but we learned to appreciate this town even more than we already did as we look back at the history and character that make this town Northfield. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ian Iverson, and in addition to being one of the authors who worked in this book, I was one of the summer assistants who edited the book after the first 2 years when we came up with the original drafts. And I'd just like to share a little bit about our writing process. As Jenna alluded to earlier, for the first trimester, we largely ignored Northfield as we tried to get our research skills up to snuff. We all wrote a series of papers with our interns on a variety of topics ranging from the French Revolutionary calendar to Vietnam-era propaganda. Also within this time, we independently researched a topic of our choice in order to produce a larger final piece. In an attempt to challenge myself, I chose the Jacobite revolts. I don't think I really realized what I was getting into until I came back from the Carleton Library with a pile of dissertations on the politics of 18th century Scotland. While that essay proved to be one of the most difficult projects of my academic career, I'm so very glad that I was given the opportunity to do it. The experience has convinced me that I have a future in history, and I hope to be writing my own dissertation within a few years. After establishing ourselves as confident writers, we moved on to the Our Story topics. Working first in groups and then as individuals, we all experienced challenging in providing succinct and intelligible accounts of complex historical events at a third grade reading level. The process taught me the value of group editing and made me a more focused writer. Exposure to such thoughtful and talented peers lifted my own skills to a level I never would have expected. I'm convinced that my success in the advanced track history and English programs at Northfield High School is a direct result of this scope experience, and I'm excited to see what Mr. Wyman does next. Thank you all for your time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Courtney Asada, and I was part of the second year of Scope. Scope was an absolutely amazing experience. Though it took place what seems like forever ago, I feel like it was just yesterday. Like the six of us were just sitting in the basement of the Historical Society, tapping away at our unbelievably old, used, slow, and terribly glitchy Apple laptops. Thick, early 90s ones. But I also remember how we felt that it was fantastic that we each got our own. I remember feeling like we were so independent and so grown up. During that year, our group had many ups and many downs. Some good memories and some not so great, but mostly good. The first one was getting selected for this extremely competitive program. Another was coming down to the Historical Society each day and working away at our topics that we were actually interested in. We would go down to the basement where the archives were located, and we would just sift through all of the information that we could find. And if you've ever been down to those archives, you know that that is a lot of information. We had so much fun getting to know each other and realizing how much our personalities truly clashed. I don't think that Mr. Earl Wyman could have picked a more diverse group of students if he tried. And this also created some very interesting and very frustrating debates at times. For instance, the first chapters that we as students wrote, we wrote all together. This came through finally after a lot of arguing about how we were going to write it and organize it, and I think it made us stronger as a group and as writers and editors. After that, it was fairly smooth sailing. Writing became routine, yet with different topics and ideas every week. We learned a lot, and we laughed a lot, and we accomplished this amazing product that I don't think I would have ever imagined that I could have created along with these wonderful students. But it did, and now we stand in front of you, and I hope you enjoy the product as much as we do. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Emma Sainer. I was part of the first year of SCOPE, and I'm going to talk about how the SCOPE program has benefited me, and it certainly has. It's been almost 4 years since I've started, SCOPE, and every day I see the benefits of it. The most obvious is how it has affected me as a writer. I learned to not only use correct grammar, but also to look at my own writing objectively, give and receive constructive criticism, and this has proven to be beneficial in every single class I've taken since. In addition to the writing aspect of it, it has got me really interested in history, and it was my first experience in with the Northfield Historical Society, and since then I've taken part in multiple different programs, including the Summer Assistant Program and the Junior Posse Tour Guiding Program. My time at the Northfield Historical Society has really helped me develop a great interest and appreciation for history, both on the local and international level, and I hope to one day pursue a degree and career in history. The last benefit of this SCOPE, well, there are many, but the last most obvious benefit was the amazing relationships I developed with the community at the Northfield Historical Society, as well as the Carleton interns, Mr. Wyman and the other wonderful staff I got to work with, and of course the 3 other SCOPE students of my year. SCOPE was an amazing experience and a defining opportunity of my middle school and high school years. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Avery Swear, and I'm here to talk about what this book means to me. So really, our story is a result of countless hours upon hours of researching, typing, and rewriting in that basement and in Mr. Wyman's classroom. It's a result of teachers, interns, volunteers, and people that I don't even know who designed the book and helped Mr. Wyman do it. It's a lot of times when you're volunteering, you do something great, but it's usually temporary. It's people are grateful for it, but it's still temporary. It won't stay with you after you leave. But with this book, it's something tangible. It's an object, and long after I graduate, it will still keep helping people, and that's just one of the most cool characteristics of this book for me. So yeah, it's pretty much just it's a result of the collaboration of tens of people that I don't know and students around me, and I'm just astounded that we actually got it done. So thank you.
Final thing I would be remiss if I didn't mention is how this book was printed. This book was printed through a grant from the Northfield Area Foundation, from Carleton College, from the Northfield Historical Society, and from the Northfield School District. We're very grateful to all of them, or this book would not have been possible. Patty Cernia did the layout, and as you'll soon find out, did a remarkable job. And Carleton College, I should mention, provides us with interns every trimester under the leadership of Cliff Clark and Susanna Ottaway. So our final task today is to present each of you board members a signed copy of Scope. We, a couple weeks ago, we got together and we signed copies, and this is a great honor for us to present this, for the students to present this book to you. We've been thinking about you for 4 years. Now we get to actually do it. This is a little bit kind of spontaneous, but I think the board members need to raise their hand so we know when we give them who the board members are. So if you wouldn't mind raising your hand, the students will present you with a copy of the book. You can raise them higher than that. Oh, that's the classmates. Okay, never mind. Two more. Who else? Aaron? You can't leave these two.
Don't forget us.
Oh, yeah.
This is so cool. Thank you, Ian. Great job. So good.
I don't know if you have time or want to use the time, but if you have questions, I'll step back in case you have any questions with the students. Otherwise, we appreciate your listening to this presentation. We went a little long, but I hope you agree that it was necessary for us to really give you a full picture of what they've accomplished, and hopefully you'll hear and see a lot more in days, months to come.
Thank you, Earl. Board members, questions for the students? Julie?
Well, we would love to have you guys stay here all night, actually. This has been amazing. And I was fortunate enough to be at the book release. And one of the questions that was asked, and I'm going to ask it again because I thought the answer was really interesting, was to talk about how you had the challenge of framing this book for a third grade level. So if one of you wants to take that, I think there was some really interesting perspective on that I think everyone would like to hear.
Yeah, sure. There were a bunch of differences between writing for someone our age or older and then writing for elementary school kids and third graders. One of the biggest ones was grammatically choosing different words that, and I guess debating over different words. There were a lot of arguments about this, that third graders could read, or that how we thought third graders could read or couldn't read. And so basically every word in there was a choice word and was thought over really carefully. And in every chapter there are different vocab sections, so any tougher words that we thought are defined. And one of the most challenging parts of that was that the definitions of these words had to be created for ourselves, for our own words in those definitions. Another grammatical element was sentences, how long or short sentences go. And that initially was really difficult, but we got into the hang of it, and it started to become a more rhythmic process, I guess. So those were the biggest challenges that I thought. Yeah.
Carrie?
Did you students come up with the questions and activities for each chapter as well? And anybody want to talk about that process?
We did come up with the questions and activities ourselves. We usually did that at the very end, just kind of a reflection as to, okay, here's something that we thought was really cool in Northfield history, and what do we want them to get out of it? So we tried to emphasize points we thought they would either think was interesting or just an important characteristic of Northfield we thought they should know. The activities always proved to be a challenge. After a while, we're like, okay, so here's an object, draw or write a picture about it, and we felt like we were using that a lot. But I also thought that end section really gave us a chance to be creative with it and allow the third graders to be creative as well.
Thank you.
Other questions? Well, I have one I want to ask that I heard also at the book, book opening evening. Someone asked about whether you got to do any interviews to do the research for this book, and I thought that was really interesting to hear about that.
Well, the answer would be yes. We got to do many, many interviews. I would say pretty much every chapter in this book, someone was involved. Well, maybe not every chapter, maybe about 2/3. Someone from the community was involved, and we do give credit to all of those people in the book. But for me, my favorite interview ever was we were working on the Armistice Day Blizzard and other various Blizzard we were working on that chapter together as a whole. And so we went down to the public library to try and find some information, and there was not a whole lot of information at the time, and I think someone even remarked, oh, if only we had a primary source on this. And then we met this man who was just sitting in the library reading some old newspapers. And he asked us what we were working on, and we told him what we were doing. And he said that he lived through all of those blizzards in Northfield. And we thought, could this get any more perfect? So we proceeded to interview him, and we got so much information. Not all of it was on the Armistice Day blizzard. He was quite a talker, but he was a fascinating man. His name was Erling Kingdom, and we ended up calling him several other times throughout the year. And so that was one of the many great things that we got to experience in Scope, was meeting interesting members of the community.
Julie, we've had really some excellent speakers address us at that podium, but I'm not sure there have been any better than this group of students right here, and I applaud you for that.
So I wanted to thank you. Oh, Ann, do you have one more?
I just wanted to thank Mr. Weinman for all the years of doing this, and his classroom work, his work in the city, learning about these things, having the students come along. You've been doing this for a number of years, and it's fabulous. Thank you so much.
So I know Earl, you mentioned a few of the people, but besides Cliff and Susanna at Carleton, and then you had Dale Ness there from the Northfield Area Foundation, and Chip DeMann. I don't want to forget that he was not only helped supervise and be the historian, but he also drove the kids, which was amazing. And I think you also talked about the Ecotrans, that they donated all the driving. And they continue to do that for the SCOPE program?
Yes, they do.
And then Chris Ellison was the proofreader, and you mentioned Patty Cernia as the layout artist. It's just a beautiful product. And I would want to echo Ann's words that, with the vision, and it would be, this would be a challenging process for any teacher to take on, and then to do it with this collaborative effort and involving so many people in the community. I mean, that doesn't make your work any easier, but it sure makes the product and the students' experience so much better. So I want to thank you.
I appreciate that. I want to mention that we've had a lot of proofreaders, and the acknowledgments, we don't have time to go into them, but I do appreciate you bringing that up, because the greatest fear is leaving someone out in a public forum, and I keep imagining that music's going to come on that tells me I have to stop. But but there are many people. We had different. Sharon Gates Hull was a proofreader. She's no longer with us. Her son came to accept a signed copy at our open house. Regina Zakryshuk was a proofreader, and I think I got them all, but many people. But each one of them I've worked with many times keep mentioning how wonderful it is to work with them. And so I appreciate you, thank you, but you can tell what a joyous job it is when you have to, when you get to work with students like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was wonderful to hear.
Okay, get off the stage.
Who has the tough act to follow? The next item is the item for individual action. And we have a proposed 2013 pay 2014 property tax levy. So, Matt,
I'm unsure if we can have any bigger contrast.
Seriously. Board members, you should have had in your packet a PowerPoint presentation.
I've spoken after many, many people, and this is not going to be nearly as good as that, I'll tell you that right now. I've got Val Bergestorff, our Director of Finance, with me this evening, and she's sitting right there to help us when we have some detailed questions. This is our first levy that we're doing this year with our new administrative services organizational strategy, and I think it's gone very well, where Val and I are working very closely together. My role looking at the big picture and communication with those kinds of pieces, Val really helping me with the detail piece, and it's been very successful so far. It is an interesting year to do this because there's lots of changes at the state level, and so most of you have seen several of these presentations before, so most of it will not be tremendously new to you. But what is the Pay 2014 levy? It's our local levy, and so it provides about 23% of our overall budget. It includes our voter-approved levies, such as referenda, as well as state-authorized levies, things like health and safety. And this is a key piece in allowing us to provide great programming like some of the stuff that you just saw for the school district. And so the levy, our local levy, is very important. It's a portion of our entire overall budget, but it is a critical part to our funding strategy. So this really begins, tonight really actually begins our budgeting strategy for the 2014-15 school year, and it begins with the truth and taxation timeline. So after we hopefully certify our preliminary levy this evening, we will send the levy information into the county, and actually that does not need to be completed till October 7th this year. Then during the time in between here, the county will prepare tax statements, and then in November, the counties will mail the statements to the taxpayers. And then, as you know, the only meeting in December, we ask you to certify our final levy. And then as the new year begins, the county prepares property tax bills and begins that process. So that's the timeline that we're essentially starting this evening. And as you all know, with our tax levy and budgeting, they don't quite match up in terms of our budget year and the tax year. And so the Pay 2014 levy goes from January 2014 to December 2014, with our 2014-15 school year budget year obviously going July through June. And the one thing that's important to remember, I know that Stephanie and before her Tom have mentioned this to you, that each levy includes adjustments from prior years, and this year is no different. We have several adjustments. And this one will include from the previous 3 years. So the entire process can actually take a total of 5 years, but we do have several pieces this year that are going to be some adjustments. One example is we do have a health and safety adjustment, and we also have an operating capital adjustment, a handful of others that will make up this year. Now one of the important things to talk about is what we have as authority and what is certified. And we are provided a maximum levying authority by the Minnesota Department of Education, and we are proposing for the preliminary levy at our full authority. And you're going to notice that this year's levy, the one that we're looking at proposing, is less than what you certified last year. In fact, it's 0.47% lower than last year. But you'll also notice that last year we levied slightly less than our authority, and that had to do with under-levying for our capital projects levy with the way the state had dealt with it in terms of some inflationary pieces and that. And the initial documents we're seeing from the state that that's not going to be necessary this year, that they've been able to fix that, so it's at that $750,000 that we have that our voters have approved. And so I think that that's the important piece to know, that in the end what we're looking for at this point is suggesting that we look at levying our full level of authority, and even with that it will still be a 0.47% reduction in our levy compared to what we certified in Pay 2013. We have a couple of notable changes, and one of the big things for the first time going through this levy certification process, there's a number of curveballs that are tossed at us, because even though the process is the same in the end, the fact is a number of the pieces that make up the calculation have changed significantly. And one of the first pieces is, of course, the change in pupil weights that begin in Pay 2014, starting with the 14-15 school year, which includes the all-day kindergarten. And it was too small to show on the screen, but I included in the narrative just showing what the former weighting was. So, for example, in the past, kindergarten weighting was 0.612. That's moving up to 1.0 next year. You'll notice that in the past, grades 7 through 12, our weighting was at 1.3, and that's dropping to 1.2. That was all part of the all-day, every day kindergarten bill that the legislature changed this year. There's also a piece around location and local equity allowance, and we've seen it written a number of different ways. The location equity revenue, we've seen the location equity allowance. We've seen it pops up in a number of different ways, but it all goes back to that $424 per student that we talked with you in August about. And the fact is, what you're going to see in our pie graphs as we move forward, that the amount that is coming to the district from the levy under the referenda category is being shifted to the other category, because it's going from voter approved to the other approved that's given us the authority by the state. And there are also some changes in the way that our pupils are counted. In our referendum, we're moving from a resident marshal RMCPU, that's right, Val, to the adjusted pupil units. And that's a new change coming forward, especially for how we calculate the income from our referendum. And again, this is just a couple of several behind-the-scene changes at the state. What's interesting is that at the state level, we are getting new runs every day. In terms of, in fact, the run today, for the first time, I think, in a week, Val, it matched what we had run on Friday. So that's unusual. There have been a number of changes, a number of things that haven't been quite right, because if you recall, it took the legislature nearly a full month after they ended to determine what they actually wanted MD to do. If you remember, there was a lot of question about, could you stack the $300 board converted levy? Could you add that to the location equity revenue? So I think that the MDE was just even slightly further behind than they normally are in trying to get all of this, which is a mammoth job for them to get this all ready for us. And so we're seeing a number of different pieces that seems like they're changing on a daily basis. In fact, this year they've even taken what I don't think is completely unique, but an unusual step to say that school districts, even after their boards certify, up until the October 7th date, can make modifications because of some of the changes that are happening. We are not planning to do that here unless there was some kind of material change that we have not foreseen. And frankly, at this point, Val and I don't see something that's going to change significantly. But when they're giving this information to all school districts a week ago, I think they were less confident, than they are right now. So it goes to show that a number of notable changes in terms of how this is moving forward. So in terms of our proposed pay 2014 levy, this is a standard piece that you've seen brought to you over the last several years in terms of how our property tax levy is divided out. And you'll see that the general fund referendum piece is lower than it's slightly been, and the general fund other is up a little bit slightly over what it's been. Our debt service and community services and capital levy remain in similar case here. But this is just how our levy will break out in terms of the categories that it will come in. There's, just so you know, the levy report is 34 pages long, and I think it's 6-point font. I mean, it's really small. And just a few years ago, I remember Tom Stringer saying that the report had gone to 30 pages. So in just a couple of years after, we're up to 34 pages of the report of all the different calculations. Because of all the changes in the calculations, they are also, remember, that they're doing some hold harmless pieces. So if there was a chance for a school district to have less money in a certain area this year than they did last year, they're doing an offsetting calculation to make sure that everybody gets the exact same amount. It's been a moving target here over the last several weeks. As we take a look at this slide, we like this slide because it shows a number of different pieces here. You're going to see that in this particular piece, these are the subtotals by fund. And in our general fund piece, which makes up, of course, these three, it makes up the debt service fund, the referendum, and the other. Basically, in terms of, you're going to see that general fund is just down by 0.25%. The community services fund is up a couple of percent, but they also had an adjustment last year, if I remember correctly. That's correct, Val? Community services had a negative adjustment last year, so it's compared to last year. They're up, but they're back to just about what they were before. And our debt service fund had just a 1% change. So as you look at our proposed 2014 of $15,284,232, that is a decrease from last year at 0.47%. You'll see we do the same numbers and just look at it in a slightly different way by the truth and taxation categories. And our voter approved, and this is where you'll see the change in the percentages. This is the switch because of the location equity revenue, the location equity allowance. You're seeing that the voter approved component is going down just over 11%, and our other is going up. Now obviously this is a higher percentage because this is such a significantly less amount of money, so the increase is a larger percent. But again, the numbers total out, and you'll see that it still shows the 0.47% change. And finally, these are based upon our pieces here in terms of referendum market value and the net tax capacity. And these are things like our voter-approved operating levies, and our net tax capacity are for things like our capital projects levy and some other components there. That's based on how those referenda are paid by the public, which strategy we use. And from being through several referendums that those are different strategies based on referendum market value and net tax capacity. And you'll see that this includes both the operating levy and then, of course, the equity revenue. So in our high-level final analysis here, Our levy is down 0.47% compared to pay 2013, but we're still recommending that we levy at the full authority level. The location equity revenue or allowance modifies the categorization of the overall levy. You saw the shifts that we talked about between those two categories. The complexity of changing of the student weights and then the offsets to try to make sure that no one loses anything was an important piece. And other changes at those state level calculations, really trying to make apples to apples comparisons from this year to previous years. While it's not impossible, it is certainly challenging at best. And so what we're asking is that you approve the preliminary certification of our levy, and it's at that $15,284,232. And again, down 0.47%. We think that that's a pretty good thing here this year. Our design was to give you a high-level overview of that piece, and then we stand for any questions. And I'll ask Val to stand up here too if you have specific detailed questions that between the two of us we can help you with.
Board members, I'm sure you have questions. Since this is under items for individual action, I would like to see if we can get a motion and a second on the table and then open it up for discussion. So can I ask for a motion to certify the county auditor's 2013 payable 2014 proposed certified net tax levy in the amount of $15,284,232?
So moved.
Moved by Julie. Seconded by Ann. All right, so let's open it up for questions.
It's not nearly as exciting as the previous presentation. We understand that.
Carrie?
So the shift from the voter approved to the other categories, how much leeway do we have in those other categories? I mean, is it sort of a, we'll put it over there, but if you want to keep your money the same, you're going to have to levy it in this other category? Is that basically what the state is doing to us? Or are they somehow putting it in a different category to try to encourage us to have less money? Does that make sense, that question?
Yeah, I get it all. Do you want to take that?
No, that's fine. It's essentially the same amount of revenue in total. They just moved it and have equalized it at a higher rate. So that chunk of money that they moved we just get more state aid on that now.
Okay.
And so that's why they put it in the other category. It's basically just to isolate it, is my understanding.
And I think also that is where the levy cap comes into play. Because if you recall, when we removed that $424 from our current levy, we would actually have room to go back and ask the voters for additional money up to the new cap, which is around $1,800, I believe. Again, very, very clear, we're not planning to do that, but that was a way to isolate those dollars, and so that districts that would have additional room to go out to ask the voters for additional operating levy dollars. And we know that, as Dr. Richardson's mentioned before, that this was there are some metro suburbs that will most likely in the next year or so do exactly that.
Okay. Thank you.
Julie?
I had a question on the per pupil weighting. In terms of our current population, how did that really mesh out? Was that a gain or a loss with the weighting?
Well, for this year, they did everything hold harmless. So it was neither way, basically. They just did a formula to say, what did you have now, and what would it be with the new formula to make it basically come out to the exact same revenue.
Okay.
So.
And remember that moving to the adjusted pupil units as we move forward, where the resident marginal before was different, but this will take into account the students who leave the district, attending other programming, and will also take into account students coming into the district for that program. And so it's really about who is here and who is getting an education in our district. And moving forward, those many state calculations will be based upon the APU as opposed to the old wonderful acronyms AMCPU and RMCPU.
Yep. All right.
I always think of R2D2 with that, but that's not the right thing. So.
And overall, we do have more students that go out than come in currently. So in the future, it does have the potential to be a decline, but for at least 14, 15, it's hold harmless. So.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Well, I really appreciate Matt and Val, the work that you must have gone into it this year with 34 pages at 6-point font. It's amazing that you can still see.
Yes, I've been talking about LASIK. Matt's been talking it up. So.
All right. Thanks. Thank you. So board members, we have a motion and a second on the table to approve the superintendent's recommendation to certify the county auditors for the 2013 payable 2014. So are there any other questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Our second item for individual action is the annual report on curriculum instruction and student achievement. And you have a draft copy. This is going to be available online.
Correct. When I believe after it's approved, we generally post it relatively quickly, and I think that you saw this last month, and several of you made, or the last meeting, and several of you offered some suggestions for some changes, and I think this is the new and improved version, and I think that one of the things that we're really proud of is that this really does show a relatively complete picture of the school district. There's lots of good information in it, and we're proud to post it, and our folks do a really nice job with it. I think the other piece just to note is that as we move forward into the world's best workforce component, that you'll see that Dr. Richardson and his team of folks working on this really tried to anticipate what the state is going to require next year, as he mentioned at the last meeting, really talking about things like ACT scores and some of those other ratings that we believe are going to be part of the expectations from MDE. I think he actually did this way so we could provide MDE an example of what they think they were talking about. So, very nicely done.
Is there a motion to approve the annual report? Moved by Noel, seconded by Carrie. Hand is next. So any comments or questions for Matt? Rob?
I guess in the future, I'm just wondering, you've got on page 2, under district and schools, no child left behind, sanctions lifted. There's a sentence that says, in Northfield, we used the data from 2011 and 2012 to set targets for each of the academic school years from 13 to 17 to respond to and achieve the goal of reducing the achievement gap by 50%.
Okay.
And it would be interesting to see that data tracked from year to year to see what's happening with the achievement gap. But I mean, it's mentioned in here several times, but there's no actual, I mean, the only place where I could find any data related to the achievement gap was in the Greenville Park report, so it would be nice to see that for the district, just what's happening with the achievement gap and what's being done to address that.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that one of the key pieces is that we're really just in the first couple of years since the department got the waiver on NCLB and really turned the focus to the achievement gap piece, which we're seeing in a number of the evaluation systems that we're putting forward and working with. So I absolutely believe that we are going to be part of the group that is producing some of that data, because I think the state is also going to be producing it for us as well. So I appreciate that very much, and we'll make sure that we take that comment as we move forward, because it is a focus. And so I think that it's a piece that we'll be seeing as we move forward.
Other questions or comments? I really like the new format and some of the additional information. Thank you. You did such a nice job. I'm assuming this came from your office?
Well, Grace actually also, a lot of kudos to her as well for moving to the new format. It's been a good team project. Heather Kuhinga should have a lot of acknowledgement for doing the land.
I'll be sure to thank Heather. All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor of approving the annual report on curriculum instruction and student achievement, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, our last item for individual action is a revision to the school board policy 613 graduation requirements and policy 616 school district accountability. Board members, you had a handout in your packet about these changes. Matt, do you want to describe a little bit about what these changes are?
Yes, they're very basic changes in terms of components. My understanding is just that will align with state requirements. And so the pieces that you'll see in the first one just simply changes the term English to language arts because we now have language arts standards in the state. You'll also see that it's added including all state requirements for our other core subject areas in terms of social studies, mathematics, and science. And that is just to make it, I believe, to make it very clear to students that it's not just about the course completion, but about all these state requirements in order to achieve the credits in those areas. And so I think in the first one, that appears to be the real significant changes, and again, really to bring it into alignment with what the state is expecting. It's the same exact piece with 616, and actually, this piece, if you really look at it, is the additions that we're believing are coming out of the world's best workforce bill in terms of just to make sure that our annual report on curriculum and the piece that you just approved aligns with what the new state statute is. And so again, these pieces are simply to bring greater alignment with state statute.
Very good. I ask for a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation on these policy revisions.
So moved.
Moved by Rob. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Ann. Any questions? Rob?
In 616 3D, the big addition there, it talks about an annual public meeting to review and revise, et cetera, et cetera. When is that held? I mean, what, is that a regular board meeting or is that a special meeting that's held?
I'm going to ask Mary Grace Hansen, our Director of Teaching and Learning, to help us out with that.
Right, that's what this was.
Okay.
The public meeting where you reviewed it at the last meeting and then had a chance
Okay.
to approve the annual report.
So I think it's a lot, the truth in taxation, if you used to have your own special separate meeting for that, and they've allowed the public meeting now to take place during the regular board meeting, and I think the state is allowing us to do that as well rather than to have an additional meeting for it.
Okay.
Any questions? All right. All those in favor of approving the revisions to policy 613 and policy 616, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ready to move on to the consent grouping. Board members, I'll remind you that there were a few additional appointments, increases, decreases, and one resignation added in the table file. Is there anything anyone wishes to pull from the consent grouping? I ask for a motion to approve the consent grouping.
So moved.
Moved by John. Second. Seconded by Carrie. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. There are no items for information this time. And future board meetings, we have two in October, the 14th and the 28th, and they will be at 7 p.m. And with that, I would ask for a motion for adjournment.
We adjourn.
Second. Did I hear a second?
Yep.
Seconded by John. All right. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The meeting is adjourned.